Greetings and welcome to In-Depth. I'm Dike Rostant. Now, Christmas may not be the sweetest time for everyone. The question, though, is how do you maintain well-being, specifically mental health, when most people are walking around all happy, happy, joy, joy? But counseling psychologist and co-director, Counselling Matters Limited, Aisha Perry, she joins us to discuss mental health and Christmas. Ms. Perry, how you doing?
I am fine today, Mr. Rostant. Thank you for having me here. And thank you for even approaching this topic, which is very, very important, particularly at this time of the year.
And thank you for making the time as well. But what are some of those challenges that can arise specifically around Christmas or other holiday seasons when we talk about mental health and well-being?
Okay, now when we talk about the challenges, we can get straight into it. The challenge, particularly around the Christmas season, is what we like to call Christmas blues. That may or may not be a familiar term to some persons. And then sometimes when people hear it, they tend to associate it with foreign countries, where there's a lot of changes in the seasons, winter, spring, summer, etc. And they don't realize that right here in Trinidad and Tobago, even with our two-weather climate, rainy season, dry season, that we still get Christmas blues, which is basically, a level of depression that persons experience around this time of the year. And it's caused by the changes in the seasons. And the main change in the season that causes this is the changes in the level of sunlight. And if you think about it, we all know, or it's common understanding that, we have less sunlight around this time of the year. It starts to get dark early, and then, dawn breaks earlier as well. Dawn breaks later. So you get less sunlight in general. And it is this change in the sunlight that creates this whole concept that we know as Christmas blues. And why is this important for mental health? It's because sunlight is important to regulate the chemicals in your body. Your melatonin and your serotonin, these chemicals, which are extremely important to help us feel good and help us feel happy. So when we experience less sunlight, even with our rainy season, dry season, and our Caribbean weather climate, when we experience less sunlight, then we are at risk for experiencing Christmas blues. And that is the general gist of that concept. And of course, I could break it down even further for you.
And that's how we get into it, but I never thought of it that way. And I've had the experience where some things that seem impossible and insurmountable, they look a little different in the morning. Didn't know whether or not it was because you slept on it a little bit, but just that presence of sunlight, and with it coming possibilities, well, a new raft of possibilities. And so thank you for that. But you spoke of Christmas blues, and I'm thinking having a blue Christmas. So, and even speak to the person who it looks as though they're going to be alone for Christmas. Even looking at something like it's the first time they may be experiencing emptiness syndrome, the children big and in their own spaces or out of the country. And it's the first time, but wait now, the house echoing a little more than it used to.
I think that is a perfect question, because loneliness is a very real thing for persons at Christmas time. And especially when you think of our context where everybody's expecting you to be paranging or spending time with family or lining with friends. And if you are unable to do that for whatever reason, maybe you live alone, or maybe this year you're just not able to do that, and maybe you would have done it in previous years. But loneliness is a very real experience that people have in Trinidad and Tobago around the Christmas season. And being separated from your loved ones and being separated from your family and not being able to really connect with them in a normal way is intensified at this point in time, especially because it is not keeping with those expectations that people have for the season. So you may find persons who are experiencing loneliness might find themselves reminiscing on the past, focusing a lot on what they can't do, what they're not able to do, and just the fact that they are by themselves. And of course, when you're by yourself, and you have that sense of loneliness, you find, along with that loneliness, you find that there's an increase in what we would call negative self-talk, in terms of your own internal thoughts, what you might say to yourself, what you might think about yourself. This might increase thoughts of hopelessness, like, my life is boring, my life isn't worth living for. I don't have enough value, I don't have enough worth, I'm not enough because look, I'm not happy. Look, nobody wants to be around me, I don't have anybody around me. So when you have those increased sense of thoughts of hopelessness, then what you find can be happening to those persons at that point in time is they can be finding themselves on the brink of, or if not experiencing, suicidal thoughts.
And there's a lot that you said there, and there are a lot of follow questions that I want to go. But even looking at that word called expectations, and having expectations, and your current reality not living up to those expectations that you would like to see for yourself. Lancelot Lane, founder rap, so he has a song where this woman is saying that, well, he's saying that he lost his partner because he can't spend for Christmas. And like 3 months ago, he make a 10 days, but if he just now, he might make a 10 years because of trying to fill or live up to those expectations. What about the individual who says, okay, well, people can't, I want people to parang, but if they come on parang, they might get ice, they might need to bring things, or they might need to bring their own sips, as people say. How does that play into it in terms of like trying to live up to the expectations that are all about, in terms of like touted, people sing songs about it? And is that a type of loneliness as well, trying to meet that expectation or thinking you can't meet it?
It is a type of loneliness, but more importantly, what you find happening there would be increased levels of anxiety, because of course you're thinking of the finances, what you don't have. So gosh, I don't really want them to come by me, because as you said, they're going to get ice, not even ice water, ice. And we hope that the sun is hot enough that the ice would melt and they get a little wetness on their throat, right? But because it's a time of gift giving and spending and fixing up the home and whatnot, when you are unable to do that, to reduce the level of anxiety that you may feel, because you think, well, okay, people expect me to have, but I may want to have guests over, or just within my family itself. Maybe I want to be able to buy gifts for my children, but I can't because of the financial strain that I am under now. So what I would say in instances like that is communication, because you do not have to live up to the Joneses. You can experience the holidays in a very unique way, in a way that you can define and set for yourself in a budget that is realistic for yourself and your family. And you can communicate this. So especially in instances where there are children in the home and, they're expecting gifts for the season, because you are thinking and they're thinking, well, when they go back out to school, everybody's going to be talking, what I did for Christmas and what I got for the Christmas. Sit with your children beforehand and communicate with them. Well, listen, this year, mommy cannot afford, or daddy cannot afford X, Y, and Z, because we don't, or I don't have as much money as I would have had before to be able to get you those gifts. And you can communicate it in a way where they can understand, without really putting any unnecessary burdens on them, but where they can understand, because we take it for granted that children can't understand. And that children won't understand, and that even if they feel sad, that they may look at you differently. But really and truly, in any situation like this, whether it's with close friends or with family, I just gave the example of children. Once you communicate honestly, then people usually understand. And you can do things that are inexpensive. So we can create gifts for each other. And again, especially this works really well with couples, with families, and especially where there are children involved. Get creative, get paper, colored pencils, markers, whatsoever, things you could find around the home. Create cards, write something thoughtful and meaningful to your wife, to your husband, to your daughter, to your son, and have do it to each other, where each member in the family can do this for each other. So that way, nobody has to spend any money. And you don't have to worry about your budget. And then the thoughts that you can get from that, from hearing what the other members have to say or think about you, and just that experience of doing it together as a family, or doing it together with your friends, or just doing it together with your children, is something so much more meaningful that you will have for years, and that you can take with you, and you may even find it a little bit more valuable than if you had just went into Port Spain, went into the mall and purchased a gift, put it under the tree, and have them open it on Christmas morning. So communication is very, very key to managing that anxiety, managing the expectations of others, and finding ways and using the resources that you already have around you to help you still celebrate the season in a meaningful way.
Even before you have that validating conversations or that expression of love and buoying each other up, there's a level of self-talk that needs to go on to almost as say, okay, well, build yourself up to the point where you're able to have that conversation outside after you talk to yourself inside. But I want to get to that when we return from the break. We are speaking with the co-director of Counselling Matters Limited, Aisha Perry. She's also a counseling psychologist. Stay with us. We return with more. Welcome back. We are speaking about mental health and Christmas, larger mental health and holiday periods, but we're doing so with counseling psychologist Aisha Perry. And just before we took the break, we spoke of having conversations so that the expectations match the reality of the situation, and the fact that the reality of the situation may not necessarily be where you want it to be, you can still engage with your loved ones in a meaningful way through this period of time. But my question, Ms. Perry, before you get to that point where you're able to have this conversation with those in your family, your loved ones, those in your circle, you need to be able to talk to yourself and say, yes, I'm going to have this conversation, as opposed to I'm just going to hide out or just going to lay low. What are some of the things that can take you from the point of saying that I need to the point of being able to have the conversation? And this is internal self-talk.
Well, I'll tell you something. For a lot of people, just facing that reality can be challenging, but that is step one. Like, this is a reality. My budget has reduced for whatever reason, whether it may be job loss or maybe a change in job. But for whatever reason, there's a change in your financial status. So acknowledging that to yourself is important. Acknowledging the expectations that you have of yourself. Because a lot of times you think of, well, the expectations of others, but before we even get to that, it's really the expectation that you have of yourself. Because a lot of times, it's, I usually provide for my family. I usually do this for myself. I usually get these things for my children. I usually do this in my community. So speaking to yourself, facing yourself, and sitting and saying to yourself, well, okay, I cannot do it this year. I cannot do it at this time. I cannot do it during this holiday season. It's a real thought that you have to acknowledge, and then it's a real conversation that you have to have with yourself. And once you do that and you face that fear, then you're going to realize the more you face the fear, the more you acknowledge the thought, the more you acknowledge the situation, the fear reduces. So that's the first few steps, acknowledging that fear, facing the reality, acknowledging the fear. And once you do that, you will find that it's easier to communicate it. Now, saying it verbally may also be a challenge. And what can help in that instance is really just writing it down. And that way the fear becomes less, because now you have an opportunity to move it from your mind to paper, and then you can craft your words clearly. And then once you see it in front of you as well written, it helps you, it really does help you be more prepared to take the next step, which is communicating it with others.
Thank you so much for that. Because and what I find as well, because people talk about journaling all the time, but sometimes it seems as though it is that distance from your brain to the paper where you can look at it a little removed from yourself makes such a world of difference. But I wanna ask about the potential situation where there is something that may occur, or let me say it a little differently. For my part, my parents' wedding anniversary is on Boxing Day, but my uncle also transitioned last Boxing Day. So, in terms of having something that will come around on an annual basis at a time like this, is there a way to start trying to be a little more positive on one side than the other? Is it a matter of recognizing triggers and how it is you're dealing with that? What are some of the things that someone in a situation like that can work towards? Because we know that the pandemic would have been very different for a lot of people as well, and they're missing those loved ones also.
Grief and loss is amplified over the holiday season because the holiday season is also associated with spending time with family. And when you look around and family members are not there because they've transitioned, then there's a gap, especially if it's a recent transition. So acknowledging your feelings, firstly, is important because feeling sad, because this person is not here, you're not able to celebrate with them as you would have done in the past, that's okay. Acknowledging your feeling and acknowledging that it is okay to feel that way, and also realizing that chances are it's not you alone in the family that has that feeling, but it's other persons as well. And so you are sitting with the feeling by yourself and you're holding it in. Somebody across the room is sitting with the feeling by themselves and holding it in. So the family gathering could actually be a perfect space for everybody to just let out whatever their thoughts and their feelings are, however it comes out, of course, without abusing the alcohol or anything that might not be good for your mental health and your well-being at that point in time. But of course, expressing how you feel, having a chat, talking about the old time days, the long time days, and doing it within that context where other people are around, other loved ones are around. So that's a context of security and warmth. And so that way you can get comfort when you express yourself, and then you can be in a position where you can comfort others as well. And then you realize that yes, the grief is there. The grief may still be there after the season, after that gathering. So it doesn't mean that it's going to go away, but it just means that in that moment, in that shared space, that you have an opportunity to connect with others who provide some sort of support for you in that moment. Sometimes, a lot of times when we're dealing with grief and loss, the initial stage is to avoid, to withdraw, to keep by yourself. But moving past that stage and actually connecting with others and sharing your grief with them helps a lot because it can be very therapeutic.
Thank you much for that. And there's something that I read in terms of I believe you believe in strategic intervention at time of crisis. So it's one thing to say, okay, well, you're dealing with things, you're writing it down, or you're right within your family circle or your circle, however you describe those parameters. But in terms of seeking help from a professional and the potential for online therapeutic care, what is that like? Because I think there may be two ways in terms of like that finite moment when you think, okay, well, I need it now, versus something that is a little longer term and consistent. Take me through that, thank you.
Okay, well, let me answer the first part of your question in terms of, getting therapy and getting external support, because I mentioned talking with family and friends and spending some time with them. But as I also said, that the grief, the feelings of sadness, the anxiety, the depression, the sense of loneliness, those things are likely to persist even after the holiday period. At times, or when it gets to the point where it is overwhelming and where it is impacting you in more than one situation, so you find that, okay, I'm not functioning as I normally would at home, I'm not functioning as I normally would in the workplace, I'm not functioning as I normally would perhaps in school, then in those instances, that is when you would have to say to yourself, well, okay, more than just talking with family and friends, I need additional support. I need professional support. Yeah. And so being aware of how it's impacting you, that feeling of being overwhelmed, how it's impacting you in different social situations, different environments is important, because it's usually at that point that persons come to the reality like, okay, I need professional help. And in an instance like that, then this is where the online psychotherapeutic care can become very important. And what that really means is online therapy, online therapy. And why is online therapy, or what are the benefits of online therapy? One, you can do therapy in the comfort of your home. Once you have a space that is really private, confidential, appropriate, then therapy comes to you. Why this can be beneficial to a lot of persons is because we still do have the stigma of, if I go to therapy, what would other people think of me? Other people think that I'm mad. I might not think that I'm mad. I don't think that I'm mad, but I do care about what other people say. So I may not necessarily want people to see me going to a therapeutic provider. And so this is where the online helps, because then it makes it very private and very confidential. And so it takes that initial fear out of the whole process of getting therapy and talking to a professional to help you build your coping mechanisms. It helps a lot as well in terms of location, because I might be, well, I am based in Port of Spain area, but someone in South might want to access my service, which has happened in the past. Then it takes away traveling time, so that and you can get the service can reach to your doorstep easier and faster. It simply requires the use of the electronic devices. In the past, I've had clients who, in the middle of their therapeutic care, they needed to travel abroad, but didn't want to stop therapy. I shouldn't say didn't want to stop therapy. They were in the middle of their therapeutic program, so continuing therapy was really important. So in an instance like that as well, being able to provide this service online was very useful to them. And so, especially at this time where we see everything is being done online, and persons are more comfortable with that whole process of accessing services online, then therapeutic care is no different. I found it to be very effective and beneficial to clients, and I have been very successful in terms of helping my clients achieve their therapeutic goals with the online process. So there are so many benefits, and at the end, it works in terms of helping clients achieve what they want to get out of therapy.
And with that, we want to thank you so much, Ms. Perry. Aisha Perry, Counselling Psychologist, Co-Director, Counselling Matters Limited. And on behalf of the entire TTT News team, this has been In Depth with me, Dike Rostant. Thank you so much for joining us.